Remove the top grommet and water tube. Remove the plastic guide and the bottom grommet. Remove the intermediate drive shaft. The drive shaft is symmetrical and can be installed with either end up. The center of the drive shaft is an oil passageway and must be open. Refer to your service manual and assemble the bearing removal tool. Insert the plate, rod, and flange nut into the drive shaft bore. Insert the remover through the prop shaft opening and thread it onto the rod. Tighten the flange nut to pull the bearing up and out of the gear case. Do not pull the shift rod out of the cover unless replacement of components is necessary. Ask your instructor if he wants the shift rod and cover serviced. Pull the shift rod out of the cover. Only two cover components are serviceable, the rod wiper and an internal O-ring. The bronze bushing is not serviceable. Carefully pry out the rod wiper with a pick or a small screwdriver. Remove the O-ring in the same manner. Wash the cover in solvent and remove all sealer and gasket material. Inspect the lower drive shaft. Check the threads and the internal and external splines for chips or cracks. The tapered surface must be free of metal transfer and corrosion. The lower bearing surface must not have any evidence of corrosion, scoring, or discoloration. The following procedure is for JV and newer models only. Install the lower drive shaft bearing retaining ring into the drive shaft bore. Make sure the retaining ring is completely seated in the groove. Place the intermediate drive shaft into the lower drive shaft. Place a new pinion nut into the pinion nut holder using OMC needle bearing assembly grease to hold it in place. Insert the nut and holder into the gear case. Rotate the drive shaft to start the nut and screw it on until it seats. OMC triple guard grease and install it onto the bearing housing. Carefully apply OMC gasket sealing compound to both the front and rear bearing housing flanges. Orient the housing with the anode down and the bolt holes aligned vertically. Install the housing into the gear case. Use a soft hammer to seat it below the seal ring. The final service procedure is setting shift rod height. Move the shift rod up and down until you locate the neutral detent. Refer to your service manual for the part number of the shift rod height gauge. Rest the gauge on the gear housing surface. Do not rest the gauge on the shift rod cover. Turn the shift rod clockwise until there is clearance between the gauge and the shift rod head. Now turn the rod counterclockwise until it just touches the gauge. After contact, turn the shift rod to the nearest forward position, 1/2 turn maximum in either direction. Finally, turn the shift rod 90 degrees to port for upper gear housing installation. This concludes service procedures for the OMC Cobra lower gear case. Ask your instructor if he wants you to reinstall the upper gear housing as outlined in the appropriate service manual.